Good morning, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. Welcome to Washington, D.C., and welcome to the World Bank headquarters. Thank you, all of you, for being here, and also thank you around the world. We're being watched by live webinar. Congratulations to you as well on International Women's Day. My name is Clara Montanez. I'm a member of Rotary International. Rotary is an organization of 1.2 million members. We're located in over 200 countries around the world. We share the same visions, values, and we do the same work as the World Bank and the Global Partnership for Education. We want to empower those who have less than us, and particularly we want to recognize today work for education for women and girls. Today, I would like to, you're going to be meeting amazing women. These women have taken bold steps to make changes that are radical in different communities around the world for education. But at this moment, what I'd like to do is start the program by introducing Keiko Miwa, is the World Bank Regional Director for Human Development, covering the Middle East and North Africa. And prior to this position, Keiko was the Director for Education Global Practice at the World Bank. She has worked on various education programs all over the world in different analytical and projects. And she has served as Manager for Education in the Southeast Asia region, as well as Country Manager in Laos. Her professional interests include education in fragile and conflict-affected states. This is very much like what Rotary likes to do. Keiko holds a PhD in Educational Policy and Administrative Studies from State University of New York in Albany. So please, a welcome to Keiko, and take it from here, Keiko.
Good morning. Good morning. Wonderful to see everybody here. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to join this wonderful event, especially together with the Rotary International and Global Partnership for Education for the really critical theme about equality and education. And I'm really excited to be here on this occasion because this is a personal story for me. And if you indulge me, so I'm from Japan, and I grew up in a fairly traditional conservative family with two older brothers. And my parents valued education, but they valued education more for my brothers, not for me. And my brothers were encouraged to do well. They were encouraged to study at the top university in Tokyo, whereas I was told, you should go to a local women's college because that saves us money. But I had a dream to work in development during my undergraduate studies. So I told my parents that for me to pursue this dream, I need to at least have a graduate studies. And my mother started crying. Too much education is not a good idea. You're not going to get married. So without support from my parents, I had to look for a scholarship. And where I found the scholarship was the Rotary. So I was lucky enough to be a... Thank you. So I had the fortune of becoming the Rotary Ambassador Scholar to do my master's in development studies. And that enabled me to continue my study at the PhD level. And at that time, my parents kind of gave up that. And this is why I'm really passionate about this topic, and I'm sure everyone here has your own education and equality stories. So when we look at the benefits of educating girls, there's enough research on this. Educating girls makes so much sense. the educated women are likely to earn more earnings, and they are healthier, and they have family planning to access. They access that service. They are likely to have less children, and their children are more likely to be nourished, and their children are likely to be better educated. So it just makes so much sense. The benefit is not only for the girls, but for the family, for the community, and for the nation. When it makes so much sense, why do we have still so much challenges in this? Why can't we have every and single girl to go to school and have quality education? And the reason, the first and foremost, it's the poverty. The girls coming from the low-income household has much less likelihood of having access to education. And if you look at Nigeria, for example, only 4% of girls coming from the poor household of northwest of Nigeria can read and write, whereas 99% of Nigerian girls coming from the rich family of the east side can read and write. And the story is like this continues. So first and foremost, the poverty. And then the more simple things like access to schools. Going to the schools may not be safe to girls. That it may be too far, or there may be risks of being harassed on the street, or the schools may not be conducive for learning. There may be violence against women at the school, or in certain cultural norms, they expect the teachers to be women, but there are not enough female teachers. So the list goes on, why there is not enough opportunity for girls. And child marriage is also another factor, that in many countries, the girls are still married off early age, and the moment that they are married, most likely they drop off the schools. And in fragile and conflict-affected states, access to education is really, really difficult. I had the privilege of living and working in Afghanistan from 2002 to 2005, right after 9/11, right after the Taliban regime fell. And what I saw there was all the schools were bombed, or almost all, and the schools are under the tree or somebody's house, but there was just so much demand for education because they were denied of education for 5 years during the Taliban regime. So now, finally, they can come back to school. So the girls are queuing up to the school. Teachers who haven't been paid for months, they're still coming to school because they are so happy that they can finally teach. And there's so much demand, but then the supply of delivering the education service was not catching up. So we really tried hard to help the government to rebuild the education system. And then I had the opportunity to work again in Afghanistan for the last 4 years. There has been tremendous progress, but the challenge still remains. And there are so many other fragile states or countries affected by conflict where the access to education is a huge challenge. So we have a long way to go. And the World Bank has worked with other partners to address these issues. And some of the simple and concrete measures has worked. For example, conditional cash transfers. Bangladesh. In 1990s, in Bangladesh, there were so few girls going to schools, but the government introduced this conditional cash transfer, meaning if giving financing to the household and also to the schools, if you send your daughters to school, that you give money. And that really helps. That really helps the household income. And also it creates, and you also support the schools. If you manage to retain girls students in your school, the schools also get the money. So with this support, Bangladesh today, there are more girls than boys in secondary school. So these kind of conditional cash transfers has worked really well in many places. And simple things like training more female teachers locally, because female teachers are not able to, many of them are reluctant to serve in the remote areas. But if you train female teachers locally, that creates a virtuous cycle of better students, better female teachers. So that has worked quite well. And reducing distance to schools, simple things like providing transport to schools, so having satellite schools nearby the villages. And also targeting boys and men, because they need to change their norms about educating girls. And bringing safe and inclusive environment to the schools. It's easier said than done, that many places still the classrooms are not safe or not conducive. I probably went to maybe like more than 500 schools in 20-some different countries. And then sometimes you see a wonderful classroom, really, you want to be there, you want to learn, but sometimes you see classrooms thinking, this really is not a conducive environment for learning. But we can do something about that. So globally, we have made tremendous progress in terms of improving access, but the quality of education or the learning outcomes remain as a huge challenge. And that's why the World Bank announced a new initiative called Learning Poverty. By learning poverty, we mean it's a very simple measure. When a child reaches age 10, can she or he read and understand a short story or short text? And could you guess what the percentage of this globally in low-income and middle-income countries? Staggering number, 53%. 1 in 2 children cannot read or understand a simple story at the age of 10. And this is based on a fairly credible international and national assessments. So it really is a staggering number. And if you look at this learning poverty in developing countries, the number is as high as 80%. 80% of children at age 10 cannot read and understand a short text. This is really morally unacceptable and also economically unacceptable. That educating girls is not only the right thing to do, but it's the smartest thing to do that we can. So that's why we are launching this initiative, and we have kind of 5 focus areas. One is to focus on students themselves, that are they prepared to learn? Do they have the good early childhood development opportunities before coming to the school? Second, focus on the teachers. Teachers are the most important agent for learning. Teachers adequate in terms of their subject knowledge, are they prepared to teach, are they motivated to teach, are they provided with good support for them to perform? And third is a classroom. Is a classroom safe and inclusive for learning? And fourth is the school systems, as a management of the education system in these countries adequate. And finally, we also look at what we can do in terms of using technology to support the education systems. So the World Bank is really, really privileged to be working with the partners such as Rotary International and Global Partnership to address this fundamental issue of providing good quality education and learning for girls globally. And we really need to work together, and we are committed to this agenda. And I would like to end with, again, a story that I visited a refugee camp in Jordan a few months ago, and I met with a refugee family from Syria. And the family was parents and 3 boys, 1 girl, and they lost a child recently at the childbirth. And the parents were telling us that they are illiterate. They cannot read and write, but they escaped from Syria, and they felt that because they couldn't read and write, they felt they were cheated along the way, being taken advantage and had to pay so much money to get out. And that's why they thought giving an education for their children is the most important thing that they could do. So they didn't need any convincing. They were committed to send their children, including their daughter. They said, our daughter is probably the most precious gift that we received. We really want to make sure that our daughter gets as good education as our sons. And and these are, just one family, but there are many families like that today all over the country. So there is a demand, but we really need to step up to make sure that there is a supply for education so that every single girl can achieve their dream. So thank you very much. And this, I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Alice Albright. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the GPE. And Ms. Alice Albright has over 30 years of international experience in private, nonprofit, and public sectors. And Ms. Albright previously served as Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Export-Import Bank of the United States, and the Chief Finance and Investment Officer for the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization. Beforehand, Ms. Albright worked in banking at JP Morgan, and she received a BA from Williams College and holds a master's degree from Columbia's School of International and Public Affairs, and is a chartered financial analyst. And under Ms. Albright's leadership, the GPE over the last 7 years has grown tremendously to become a major player in education. And most importantly, I really admire Ms. Albright for her passion in supporting education, and especially in the most difficult circumstances like the fragile and conflict-affected states. So without further ado, Ms. Albright, I'd like to invite you to the...
Keiko, thank you again so much for that kind introduction. And before I get on with my remarks, I do want to thank certainly Rotary, and I've got some things to say about that, but we at GPE are happily hosted by the World Bank and share a number of different types of relationships. And Keiko and I were recently in Geneva at the Global Refugee Forum, and it was very clear to me we've made a joint commitment to furthering education in refugee settings, and Keiko, it's very clear to me that we have a wonderful partner in you along those lines. Well, it's a great delight to be here today for many, many reasons, not only in the day or two before International Women's Day, but we have a number of very strong ties with Rotary. We've just announced a huge partnership with Rotary about which we are not only tremendously proud, but tremendously enthusiastic. And Rotary has very kindly made me an honorary Rotarian now twice, once in Nairobi. Where's Gita Manik? Gita is back there. There's Gita, our dear friend in Isaac, when we announced our partnership with Rotary in Nairobi. And then yesterday, the local Rotary folks also made me an honorary Rotarian, along with one of my colleagues, Alex, who's around here somewhere. There's Alex, and Praveen have done a lot of the work around this. But then, of course, I've gotten to know Rotary in a somewhat different way, which is my dad is a Rotarian. Joe Albright is a Rotarian in Wyoming. And whenever we go visit him, I know how important he puts Rotary in his life, because even if we might want to go hiking or something, he says, no, 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 I'm going to my Rotary meeting. And so I know that he holds Rotary very, very high. So let me share with you, and this is very much building, Keiko, on what you were talking about. Let me share with you some additional reflections about the challenges the girls face in getting a quality education. And the focus, Keiko, that you put on barriers is exactly right. And so what we need to be all about is dismantling those barriers. Let me start by putting sort of a name and a face around the question of barriers. Her name is Brishna, and she is a young girl from Helmand province in Afghanistan. And at age 7, Brishna's only dream was to get an education, and those are her words. There were no schools in her village, and war forced the nearby schools, which possibly could have been available, also to close. And even if a school had been open, her family could not have afforded to send her to a school. And finally, her community would not have allowed her to sit in the same room with a male teacher. So everywhere Brishna looked, she faced a barrier to getting a quality education. I'm proud to say that GPE, working as a partnership, opened that door for Brishna. We've provided funding to create 250 community-based schools in just 18 months, and we've staffed them and trained female teachers. At age 9, Brishna has now started school in her village, along with thousands of other girls in Helmand, and she is now overjoyed to be able to go to school. So we at GPE, as a partnership, put Brishna at the heart of everything we do, not just on International Women's Day, but every day. In order to do this, we've mobilized $7 billion. We transform education systems in nearly 70 developing countries, and we've put 41 million girls like Brishna into school. So that is 41 million more girls who can realize their dreams to become doctors, scientists, CEOs, and hopefully presidents. While this is important progress, there are some things that we need to realize about the state of play. Let me talk first about the progress. One of the things that we're doing this year, many of you will be aware of this, is looking back on the Beijing conference that occurred 25 years ago and asking ourselves, so how's it going? At that time, we knew that providing education for girls was going to be one of the drivers to progress. Yes, we know that there are more girls and more boys that are actually in school, and that has occurred since Beijing, in part because of Beijing, but also because of the efforts that preceded it. So we are closer to achieving what I would call gender parity at the universal primary school level. That's an important milestone, as many girls as boys are beginning to start school. So that is indeed progress. It's good news. But, here's the but, parity is not the same as equality. Let me talk a little bit about what I mean. Out of the 260 million children who are out of school, yes, half are girls. That's an example of parity. But those 130 million girls who are out of school are 1.5 times more likely to stay out of school than boys. That is what is inequality. If you look at the overall span of an education system from the beginning to the end, it is girls that are far more likely to be excluded from it than boys. And these barriers are highest for the poorest children and the poorest girls that live in the most rural areas. So for every 100 girls born in the world's poorest countries, 53 will finish primary school, only 29 will make it to the end of grade 10, 13 will be able to graduate from high school, and only 4 will be able to finish university. And that's probably going to be the wealthiest girls. So think about those numbers. Start with 100, and by the end of university, only 4 of them are going to university. That's a major challenge. And for Brishna, the chances of her actually going to university, and girls like Brishna, are probably 0. And even when we do have progress of girls getting into school, this has not yet translated into equal participation in the workforce, equal pay, equal representation and leadership in political settings. Those are examples where there is still significant issues of equality. It's inequality. And unless we start doing something really different, it's not going to get better anytime soon. There are estimates that show that it will take, depending on what country you're talking about, between 50 and 150 additional years to achieve equality. And for all of us in this room, that cannot be good enough. So where do we go from here? We have about 10 years left to achieve the SDGs, and I think that the thought that has to be on our mind is that business as usual is not going to get us where we need to be. So we ask ourselves, what's the answer? At my organization, GPE, right now we're in the middle of a big strategic planning process, and here's our answer to that question looking over our work for the next bit of time. We are going to put gender equality at the heart of everything we do at GPE. We want to be able to give every girl equal opportunities to go to school, and we want to use education as a springboard to achieve gender equality throughout society. And it's in fact, many of the topics that Keiko just talked about. Let me tell you what that looks like in practice thus far. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is one of the partner countries of GPE, we see high rates of girls that are out of school. This is due to early childhood marriage, a high rate of teenage pregnancy, as well as expectations of the roles that girls ought to be playing in societies. In our work in the DRC, we have focused on 2 provinces where we see the highest rate of girls who are out of school. There, we helped the government develop a girls' education strategy, and thus far we see that benefiting just under 1.5 million young girls. With our funds, schools were able to build proper toilets. We built into the curriculum some work on eliminating gender stereotypes in the textbooks. We've helped the government run a public campaign on the benefits of girls' education. We've also trained some teachers, and we've also helped enhance school infrastructure to provide better environments to learn. I often get asked, so why are we focusing on girls? In addition to all of the equality-related answers to that question, it's because if we are able to help some of the most vulnerable people who are not getting education, it means that we're able to lift the tide and help everybody get a good education. So if we're able to get it right from girls in the most vulnerable parts of the world, everybody will benefit. It's further because we know that an educated girl can change the world. Stepping up the pace on gender equality will pay dividends in multiple ways. It will have a ripple effect on her family, on the community, and on the country in which she lives. Her economic potential will be higher. There's now a lot of data that shows that if we enable girls to finish high school, there's a very positive impact not only on her earnings potential, but the overall level and buoyancy of the economy of the country that she lives in. Her family and her community will be healthier. It will be more productive. It will be more peaceful. And she will be much more resilient and capable of tackling the challenges that are undoubtedly ahead due to climate change. An educated girl can imagine a better life for herself, for her community, and her country, and she can get it. So we need no 2 better examples than that, than Malala and Greta Thunberg. Think about what the 2 of them have done for girls getting an education and for our awareness about climate change. So what will it take to get every girl in school and learning? It will take a massive surge in political will, and it will take a massive increase in resources, and it will take focus, and it will take determination. Regarding political will, it will take all of us to work together in partnership to make gender equality a priority. Regarding funding, we face a massive gap, an annual financial gap of $39 billion to get every kid into school. It will take all of us to mobilize all of the muscle that we have to mobilize additional resources, both internationally as well as from the governments themselves and their prioritization of education within their own domestic budgets. And after that, it will take driving structural and transformational change in how education systems actually deliver. And that's the core business of my organization, GPE. We invest in solutions that we hope will have a catalytic impact on improving learning outcomes. And it will take planning for success at scale that ensures that every girl has a great teacher, every school has proper sanitation facilities, every community has the capability to fight gender-based violence in school, and that every girl is aware of her rights so she can insist on getting a proper education. And it will take growing our partnerships and thinking as creatively as we can about how we work. And so therefore, we are absolutely delighted to be having announced a partnership with Rotary. As a prominent group of business and community leaders, we are very confident that we will work together very well to help drive the outcomes that we all share dear. And we've started our work in Kenya. Where's Gita? Gita is back there. Gita Manik, our new dear friend, we're delighted to be able to start working with you in Kenya. And Gita will tell you more about that in a little while. So what does it take to get every girl into school? And think about Brishna. It will take completely rethinking how education systems deliver. It will take listening to what young girls want. It will take putting more female teachers in the classroom. It will take improving infrastructure. It will take a significant step up in political will and determination. And it will take a lot more money. And I think we can work together to secure the transformational change that we need across all of those dimensions so we can deliver to Brishna and all of her friends what she really deserves and what they deserve. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's been wonderful to be with you. Very much look forward to working with Rotary. It's a fantastic organization, and I look forward to hearing what others have to say about their work. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Keiko and Alice. Very thoughtful presentation. My name is Alex Palacios. I'm with the Global Partnership for Education as well. I'm responsible overall for the relationship with Rotary. I've had a long history with Rotary, dating back to my days at UNICEF many years ago. And my job today, in order to keep my job, is to make sure that I get through this next segment in 50 minutes with all of you. So let's hope I won't get fired. Let me introduce you today to our panelists, Rotary panelists today. Gita Manik from Kenya, Brenda Erickson and Carolyn Johnson. Please come in and have a seat. These three women represent just a few of Rotary's education and literacy projects worldwide. Each year, Rotary awards nearly $13 million for community-based education and literacy efforts. And Rotary's focus on global education, on basic education and literacy, aims to work toward equality in education, as Alice was describing earlier, educating young people for prosperous development, and educating young people for peace. These volunteers work to address the UN Sustainable Goal number 4, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. We're far from that here in the early part of 2020. They focus on developing goodwill projects that are replicable and with continued success can spread globally. But let's let them tell their stories of grassroots efforts. And first we'll hear from Gita Manik. As Alice has explained earlier, Gita serves as Rotary's key contact in Kenya for the growing Rotary GPE partnership. She's currently serving as chair of Rotary International's Joint Committee on Partnerships. And beginning July 1, she will become one of 16 trustees of the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International. The foundation supports projects of 35,000 Rotary clubs in 200 countries and regions, and each year awards some $100 million in grants, including nearly $13 million for basic education and literacy projects. Gita has also led the Rotary Foundation's Health Major Gifts Initiative and serves as a member of the Foundation's Major Gifts Initiative Oversight Committee. She was the first woman regional leader overseeing more than 140 Rotary clubs in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Eritrea. As an entrepreneur and businesswoman by profession, Gita manages segments of her family's interests in retail trade and real estate. She's an ardent supporter of increasing women's capacities, engagement, and leadership, both within Rotary and the community at large. And she exemplifies the ethos that women are often closer and more attuned to the needs of the communities where they live and work. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce Gita Manik.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for that very kind and generous introduction, Alex. And thank you also for this opportunity to let me share my experiences through the kaleidoscope of my Rotary life. The lessons that I have learned, and of course, my thoughts on the potential avenues of collaboration and service, which I know that can impact my part of the world and elsewhere. As a die-hard Rotarian, I expressly subscribe to Rotary's popular motto of "He profits most who serves best," and talk about the real impact and the power that each and every one of us has individually and collectively to transform this world. The power can range from soft power, building leadership capacity, it can be training, it could be direct service, whatever is your calling. Know that you can be that change maker in transforming lives. And by transforming lives, I mean that together we can bring equality, we can bring equity, we can bring dignity and self-esteem to all those who feel disenfranchised and marginalized. Growing up in Africa, I have had the opportunity to witness firsthand some of these disparities. But at the same time, I've also had the opportunity, with a myriad of opportunities to serve, to give back. And I've done this through the NGO forum. I've done this through faith-based organizations. I've done it through community-based initiatives. I was engaged in many such setups over the years, but I still felt a sense of detachment. I lacked a certain type of fulfillment till I joined Rotary about 20 years ago. The experience that I've had with Rotary is intrinsically different. I feel that I've gained far more than I can give back to Rotary or the society. I have gained precious friendships. I have learned a lot of leadership skills. I've had support and friendship and encouragement from Rotarians. Rotary has not only connected me to the entire world, but it has given me hundreds of opportunities just to grow personally and to make my connections and just develop. Besides, Rotary also provides networking opportunities and building partnerships, such as this wonderful partnership that we are going to have with the Global Partnership for Education, and other similar-minded, like-minded organizations. At Rotary, I have discovered my perfect forum to add my little drop in the ocean of service. So thank you, Rotary. Growing in the backdrop of rural Kenya, my family wholly subscribed to the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. It is these core values, morals, and the concern that I have had over the years. It has been instilled in me, and it has become second nature. Despite having my formative years growing up in Thompson's Falls, a village in central Kenya, I considered myself privileged, as I never lacked anything I needed, but not necessarily what I wanted. Being amongst one of 9 children with limited resources, it was the order of the day, and there was no negotiation. I walked to school every day. My school was a solid structure of stone and cement. We had door, we had windows, we even had a roof. My entire school was about half the size of this hall. And in that hall, we had clusters of groups from grade 1 to grade 7, and we had one teacher who walked from group to group as he taught the different levels. Only the school master, the teacher, had a desk to work from. All the children sat on cold cement floors, and we were lucky enough to have a straw mat, which we all used very effectively and efficiently. Our teacher was the principal, he was our teacher, he was the administrator, he was the bursar, he was everything, all in one. But he was the most respected citizen of our village because he developed us, he grew us, he challenged us, and we became who we were because of that one teacher teaching 7 classes in one go. The most junior of the classes had slates to write on, which we would wipe or wash away. The older children had the privilege of having one exercise book for the whole year, and some even had fountain pens which were refilled from the one ink pot that stayed on the teacher's table. The middle school had pencils for their exercise books, and there was one table sharpener on the teacher's desk next to the ink pot. And the master of our class, the teacher, he had a wall that was painted black, and he would use chalk to write when chalk was available. From that little school, at the age of 7 or 8, I was bundled off to a boarding school in the city, and my entire world changed. It was a shell shock for a real villager to be in a city. But 2 years later, when my younger sisters joined me at the same boarding school, I was the most experienced, most exposed 9-year-old mentoring my sisters into the ropes of city learning. As much as we have made so much progress over the last few years, many parts of my country and my continent, even today, are going to school in the similar circumstances that I went to over 50 years ago, if not worse. And this situation is not acceptable in the 21st century. But Rotarians have their impact on education. Our district governor, Joe Otin, aptly describes a recent visit only 2 weeks ago to a small village on coastal Kenya, and he said, "The state of the classrooms in Kibarani Primary School will wrench your heart. When Rotarian Deepak returned home, joined the Rotary Club of Kwale, on his first visit to the school, he was stunned. He called his contacts and raised $40,000 to bring the school back to future. They've constructed modern classrooms, erected 10 toilets, supplied classroom furniture, and drove up the enrollment from 50 to 500 children," end of quote. Such similar humanitarian services are dotted all across our continent. I believe that amongst all the avenues of service, education is probably the most vital link to nation building and development. This element forms amongst the core values within any development agenda. Again, within the sphere of Rotary, within our own partnerships across the world and the passion to serve, another project stands out to showcase the vast potential of partnerships. A US-led group of Rotarians who are still in Kenya a week ago, led by Lester Cooper, wrote, he said, "Lake Chelan Rotary Club, District 5060, and the Rotary Club of Milimani in Nairobi have been working to improve lives of the children who attend the Kisiriri Primary School in Kenya. Their idea was to provide clean water, sanitation, improved classroom facilities, but he writes, there have been unintended consequences. The test scores have improved. Students attending school increased from 629 to 854. Girls staying at home each month reduced from 90% to 5%. A school library has been stocked, and we have only just begun," end of quote. So by extension, this partnership with Rotary International and Global Partnership for Education has come at a great time because together we share a vision of achieving sustainable goal number 4, as Alex told us about, to make education inclusive, equitable for all, whilst at the same time we would like to work with governments and communities to find sustainable solutions to our challenges. GPE has been great to Kenya. I can never thank you enough for looking after the children of my nation. GPE has generously supported Ministry of Education in Kenya by supporting the education sector with $200 million. Despite this, children of my country, especially Turkana, are less likely than their urban counterparts to complete secondary school. Rotary intends to work with the Ministry of Education and GPE to help create a positive and lasting change in these areas, and I am going to be at the forefront of that. We are in the process of identifying specific schools in the area, and we are going to use our Rotary volunteer energy and resources. We will provide innovative approaches and improve planning and accountability. We will provide learning materials. We will identify variable solutions to attract, retain, and motivate the qualified teachers. With one of Rotary's major goals being basic education and literacy, we believe that education is a powerful equalizer. This is the only initiative that allows a pauper to sit at the table with the prince, and the only initiative that can end the endless cycle of poverty, despair, and hopelessness. The Rotary Foundation each year supports 35,000 clubs around the world, with over $100 million. Approximately, as Alex said, $13 million of this go directly towards education, educating young people to have prosperous development, to have a hope, to move their own agenda. We educate children for peace, and we educate young people to make sure that there is no disparity. That is our aim. So as we celebrate the International Women's Day with the theme of equality for education, I believe that women are true social engineers and architects of our society. And if women are empowered, we will transform the communities. Through my own journey within Rotary, I have witnessed the growth of women in Rotary. But it's not growth for the sake of growth. It's rather the impact that women are bringing to the table. Women in Kenya, Rotary in Kenya, are in roles of influence. They are in roles of leadership. They're enforcing stewardship and transparency within public service. And tears well up in my eyes when I hear the voices of women, the volume rise. This is what we are celebrating today. For me, this is an exciting time for the African woman, as my reference is from my mother's generation to my generation. However, this excitement can lead to complacency. And some of today's problems are far more worse than we could have ever imagined. Amongst these are human trafficking, social exploitation of young people, exclusion, extremism. To speed up our efforts and transform this world in a single generation, education is the only answer. In closing, I wish that every child in Kenya, and of course on my continent, would have the same opportunity to access high-quality education, which really is their basic human right. This would give them the dignity to hold their head high. It would give them the confidence to take on the 21st century head-on. Rotary's foremost motto of service above self, to me, is the epitome of being a gift and at the same time being gifted back in return. So ladies and gentlemen, as we part today, I can only urge you to reflect within yourself and ask, what is my sphere of influence? Where can I act to impact? How can I directly or indirectly empower women and make them the true agents of change? So in generations to come, I too can be counted and say, I was amongst those women that effected transformational change towards equality for education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geeta. Truly inspirational and touching, I must say. You've got my vote. My job next is to introduce Brenda Erickson, the Rotary Club of Peachtree City, Georgia. Brenda is a certified Montessori primary teacher with 4 decades of experience in teaching children to read, and she's the founder of the Counterpane Montessori School in Fayetteville, Georgia. She's the developer of a Montessori-minded early literacy program that teaches the fundamental tools of print. And through this early literacy program, early childhood educators and parents acquire tools to help children build early literacy skills by introducing a concrete letter in association with its most common sound in the child's language. And over the past decade, this program has impacted thousands of children through preschools and Peace Corps volunteers in South Africa, and more than 500 teachers and 4,000 students in Puerto Rico. Please help me welcome Brenda Erickson.
Thank you. very much. I am very excited to be here and to share my story with all who will listen. Okay. I'm particularly glad to be at the World Bank because I know there are data-driven people listening to this talk. And I want to paint my layman's understanding of some data on reading proficiency, and hopefully you will tell me if I see it correctly. Where are we on this journey to reading? Globally, according to UNESCO, 56% of primary school-aged children are not reaching minimum proficiency levels in reading. In the United States, according to the Annie E. Casey Foundation, 65 to 70% of fourth graders scored below proficient in reading between 2002 and 2019. That should scare all of us, I think. To add to the picture, UNESCO says that globally, most of the children who are not learning are in school. As I see it, what we're doing is not working, globally or locally. The American Federation of Teachers states that fully 95% of all children can be taught to read. There's such a discrepancy in there. So what are we missing? More schools? More books? More tests? My story is about my frustration with this and the fact that as a Montessori teacher, I have my life spent working with little people. And when I had my 3 children and they were babies, it was very clear to me that I had an affinity for little people and that I loved teaching reading. So I started this school. And in that school, we're small, but we don't have any of the issues that seem to be prevalent in these scores with teaching reading, because we do it a little differently. And so why can't our little school reach past our walls and go out and do something with the children in the world? And that is exactly what we have tried to do, be far bigger than ourselves. So we designed a program that was a hands-on, Montessori-minded program that basically puts, see those beautiful letters on the ground? These wonderful letters that are made in the United States, with Braille on them, by the way, which helps to orient the letter for the child so that you don't have to correct a child. And the value of this program is that it is for 0 to 5-year-old children. Typically in the world, children go to school 5 to 7 years of age. In Brishna's case, it was 9 years, I think, if I got her name correct. And at that point in time, you have missed the dramatic growth in the brain for language. And if we can intercept children earlier than school with the hand-brain connection, feed the materials to the child, it's really quite done, and that's been our experience. I'm so grateful to my Rotary Club, the Rotary Club of Peachtree City, and my District 6900, because they have supported this effort from the beginning to currently to now. I mean, we have been in South Africa with the Peace Corps volunteers, and this program is wonderful for them. This is what you see. With Peace Corps, the Peace Corps volunteers in the village, they need to have the village people trust them. To build that trust, it is important to teach the sounds of the letters because that bridges, that they're not teaching English, actually. They're teaching the same letter sounds of the letters in the home language. That feels safe. And that gives a step forward for the Peace Corps volunteer to be absorbed into the community, to actually make a difference. So this is the way learning happens for little people 0 to 5, or whoever can't read, whether it's an adult or anyone else. The point is you have to know your letter sounds before you could read or write. I think we can all agree to that. So it happens in the dirt, it happens with a stick, it happens with a stone, it happens in a grocery store. If you will look at the child's hands in the grocery store, she has an on one hand and a s on the other. That's because mom understands the value of this program. This does not have to happen in a classroom. As a matter of fact, it's a bit late if it waits for the classroom, because the brain, the way the brain learns in those early years is really important. And we need to read and learn and look at those little people and see maybe how we can make a difference. Can you read the little message? Anyone? I am really sorry. Now, think about the power of a little person, girl, boy, whoever, that wants to communicate something to someone. And that's what they can do if they know the letter sounds. Don't expect good spelling. The next one. Okay. This is one of my very favorite pictures. Look at the dynamic around that table. These are 3-year-old children in Puerto Rico in a Head Start classroom. They are building the word peso, and the only reason they can do that is because they know every one of those letter sounds. And they're 3, and look at the excitement. And they have that little boy has figured out he's got the, okay, he's got it. And they're all pointing to him and knowing he's got it as well. If you can have that much excitement at 3, the rest of the story is pretty well safe. And where are the teacher's hands? They're not. She is not having to be involved. She has empowered the children to do the work. The little list of groceries on the left is from South Africa. Meat, rice, pap, and I don't know if anyone in here knows what pap is, but it's a starch, like a potato substitute, if you would, a carbohydrate substitute in South Africa. Chips, fish, and juice. If you look really carefully, you can see the I right after the j, okay? This is so much fun, guys. Okay, the next, okay. Now, back to my original story. You don't have to have these letters to be able to teach a child the sounds of the letters. This teacher didn't have the money. There was no money to give her the set of sounds for her classroom. So I showed her how to do it with paper and cookies. They called them cookies there, a magic marker. And so she is showing those 5 preschool children what the sounds are with paper and cookie. And that is all it takes. The letter, I'm sure you all can read that, can you? Dear Santa, will you please come to my house early? Look at early. I love it. On December 15th, love, Lynn. Why am I a Rotarian? Look at what I get to do. Okay, the next one, please. And this is what happens. This is a bit of what you see at the end. You have a little Puerto Rican boy, Hugo, who has written, does anyone in here speak Spanish? If you do, you will be able to figure that out. It's a car of many colors, is what it says. Okay? And the picture on the right is a serious arrival point, because that is Robin Jones. He is the on-the-ground person in South Africa. And this child, we were there doing an observation, and this child was walking around like I do with this piece of paper I have all day while we were there observing, just walking around following us. The teacher finally came to us and said, "She wants to read to you." Okay, well, you know and I know that she could have memorized whatever's on that paper. Not like accusing her of anything, but the logic of it was she had memorized what was on the paper. So I wrote her my own little message. I had fun in the sand. And I gave that to her, which is what she has, and what she's reading without flaw to Raman. This is a child who lives in a township in South Africa, in Mamelodi. Okay, if anyone, it's 1.5 million people who live on the dirt, who live wall to wall, who live under corrugated metal or whatever scraps they can find to put them together a house with 6 to 8 people living in one room. There are so many stories to tell about children and their needs, but we won't make any of that change if we can't assure literacy, the very basic tools of literacy. Now, the Puerto Rico, the one on the left, this is why when you are a service-oriented person and you do these things, it comes right back at you, bigger than it goes out. I want you to see this. What? Oh, stop it a second. I need to tell you what's going on in here because you're not going to know. She's speaking Spanish. She's saying, give me the o, or actually she said the first, I believe. Then she says, give me the o. In every country but the United States, that letter is called o, not o. O, the sound of it. In the United States, that letter is ah. Go figure. So she's asking the little two-year-old for the Then she asks for the o. Then the child has figured this all out. She just wants me to give these letters to her. So she sweeps up the letters and gives her the rest of it in this, okay? Watch how beautiful that teacher is and how wonderfully responsive she is to that child without judgment. She puts them down. Then watch the child when she says this, watch what he does with his hand. This is knowledge. Okay, sorry. No, we have to start it again. Escucha. Okay. They say I have to quit. Can you see?
Dame o. Escucha. Dame. Muy bien.
Okay. I want to close. So I just want to say, adding classrooms will not change the scores. But a simple change in practice and the relationships that will be fostered in that effort will change the scores. Face-to-face is amazing. What happens to children when they get attention is amazing. But please give them the right information. Give them letter sound information first, and don't move to letter names until they are already sounding out words. Keep in mind, this is not a snake. This is not an S. This is a S. Or you have 130 pieces of information that a little person has to negotiate. They only need 52. Lowercase, sound. Girls, learning at home, learning the sounds of the letters at home. They're going to drag me off the stage. Will be able to read before they go to school. So if they don't go to school, they have a safety net for them. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. Our final Rotary speaker is Carolyn Johnson of the Rotary Club of Yarmouth, Maine. She has more than 30 years' experience as a teacher and elementary school principal, and she's the driver behind the Guatemala Literacy Project, which provides teacher training, a low-cost textbook rental program, literacy materials, and computer labs to children in some of the country's lowest performing middle and secondary schools. Please join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shift your perspective a little bit here. 14 years ago, I was a principal in an elementary school, and the third week in February, I found myself on an airplane going to Guatemala. Quite honestly, I had to look up where Guatemala was. But I'd been invited by the Guatemala Literacy Project and a group of Rotarians to travel there to see the work that GLP was doing in the country. Next slide. GLP provides books, it provides computer labs, and it provides scholarships, primarily for girls, at the middle school level, grades 7, 8, and 9. And as we traveled around, this group of about 40 Rotarians and I traveled around. We went to many, many schools. We brought the books. We brought the computer labs. We met the parents. We were in rural highlands of Guatemala in very indigenous schools. And it was fabulous. But one of the places where we stopped was a small elementary school. Little kids are cuter. So we brought school supplies and some books and such. And somehow the word traveled that I was a primary school principal. And a couple of the teachers and the principal from that school came out to me and said, "Will you stay? Will you stay? Because our teachers don't know how to use these books." I couldn't imagine. We talked that evening to the folks with GLP, and they said, you know, the textbooks at the middle school level are terrific. Of course, the kids and the teachers love the computers, but our challenge is the children really don't know how to read, and their comprehension skills are terrible. What do? Can you help us? Being a primary school person, I said, well, yeah, we can help you, but you start teaching kids at first grade how to read. You don't wait until they're in 7th. A year later, time goes by. I spent more time in Guatemala, and I met this little fella. This is how reading is taught in Guatemala. A reading lesson is about 30 minutes of, this happened to be the letter M, and copying the letter M over and over and over again. There's no comprehension. They're only learning information. That's how the culture of reading was born. Culture of Reading is an initiative that we packaged into GLP to get kids excited about books, to get kids excited about reading, and to get teachers excited about reading. The reason why the lesson in reading for the day is the letter M is because teachers don't have access to good quality children's literature. They don't have access to any children's literature. They don't have the training. They don't have the background in how to teach. So the program that we built brought them books and school supplies, really good picture books, really good story books, because what we wanted to do was change that culture. Change that culture so that kids are excited and that teachers are excited. So it started with books. The second piece we did was to provide a strong teacher training program over a period of time. You can't learn something in one shot. You have to work with teachers. You have to work with people over a long period of time. So our training goes on for about a 2-year period with each teacher. And the third thing that we did is work with the teachers, go into their classrooms and provide coaching. They'd never seen anything like this before. We really have to do the program. Yeah, you need to do it. And we're going to help you do that. That coaching, that holding their hand, that showing them that they are able to do it. Can you go back a slide, please? So I'd like you to talk for a few minutes, just tell 2 stories about what happened as a result. First, I'd like to introduce you to Josefa. Josefa is a first grade teacher in Zacatepec, Guatemala. I'd been working with Josepha for about a year. And at the end of the year, we went into her classroom and we said, so Josepha, have you seen any changes in your classroom? Now we're doing testing and we're looking for data. So we had we knew the on paper numbers and results. And Josepha looked at me and she said, results? She said, this classroom is completely different. I said, so can you tell me a little bit more? Can you tell me how? Tell me why? And Josepha says, well, Miss Carolina, when you came in and we did the first training, she said, you told us that first grade children would learn how to read better. And we knew you were crazy. So much for this program. She said, because we knew first grade children couldn't learn how to read. It's a first grade teacher. And they didn't believe that first grade children could learn how to read. But she said, we'd keep coming because you fed us a nice lunch and we like the books and we like the materials and darn it, you came into our classroom every month and so you wanted to see what we were doing. So we kept on with the program. And she said, something has happened. She said, at the end of the year this year, she said, at the end of the year, typically, of the 50 children in my first grade classroom, I would promote about 28 of them to second grade. Well, in Guatemala, if you're not promoted to first grade and second grade, mom and dad just don't send you back to school for second grade because obviously school's not for you. So that's a death knell there for education. She said, but this year, I didn't promote 28 children to second grade. I promoted 45 out of 50. That's changing the culture. That's changing the culture of education. And that's also changing the culture and the belief system of teachers, that they have capacity and they can do the work and make a difference with their students. The second story I'd like to share with you about impact, we worked with first and second grade teachers and we grew the program so it goes up to the end of primary school, up through the end of sixth grade. And we don't use picture books anymore. In sixth grade, we're using chapter books and working with the kids, really focusing on comprehension strategies. And we did one of our visits to a school. We were way up in the hills. We were up in Pichabad, and we went into a classroom and asked the children, so what books have you read? What books are interesting? Because of course you're going to get the straight story from the kids. The teachers are going to tell you that they've been reading them all. And the kids were all, we read this one, we read this one, we read this one. And this young man, Juan Carlos, put up his hand and he says, Senor, reading's changed my life. I said, really? It's like a 13-year-old boy. Tell me a little more. How has reading changed your life? And Juan Carlos says, well, you gave us this book. And you gave us this book, and the teacher told us that we had to read it, and we started reading it. And he said the story was about a boy who was a bully. And he was really horrible to the kids around him. He said he made them do things that the other children didn't want to do. And he really was a terrible, terrible person. And he said, I read that book, and I got halfway through it, and I realized that was me. And the other kids said, yeah, he was awful. And he said, I read the book, and he said, I decided that if the boy in the story could change by the end of the book, then so could I. He read the story had a happy ending, and he said, I decided that I needed to be a friend. And the way to be a friend was by helping people, not by making people do things for you, making people do things that they didn't want to do. It's by being a real friend. And the kids said, yeah, he's changed. The teacher said afterwards, this was the kid that no one wanted in their classroom. He was awful. He was a bully not only to the other kids, he was a bully to the other people in the community and a bully to the teachers. She said, he has changed and he's turned around. And is he there every day? Of course not. But he's trying to make a difference with his life and he's trying to be a friend. That's the power of stories. That's the power of books. That's the power of children being able to come out of their own lives, put themselves in the place of another and consider it and then bring it back to, so what's the impact on me? We have lots of data. We have lots of information about the impact of our programs. But I think the real impact of the culture of reading is the culture that we have changed in classrooms, the culture that we have changed among children, the culture that reading is something valuable and important. There's all kinds of ways that Rotarians can get involved. Certainly, the last 14 years, I've spent more time in Guatemala than I think I do at my own house, but that's okay, and it's really great to have a Rotarian husband that supports that effort. But there's so many different ways that Rotarians can get involved. This particular project, when we do a grant each year, and we do one each year, we have Rotarians from over 125 clubs throughout North America, and actually several clubs in Europe as well that support this. We all work together to make a difference. It's not just in Guatemala. We can do this in our own backyards. There isn't a primary school in anyone's hometown that couldn't do more with books, with literature, and with a supportive individual to help kids learn to read. That's the difference that Rotary makes, and that's the difference of education. Thank you.
Many thanks, Carolyn. That was really special, very good. I've been to Guatemala numerous times, and I can connect. So we wanted to give a few minutes for the audience to have a chance to ask any questions of our great panelists. And I just wanted to start, if I could. Every single one of those examples is a great example, and the thought I have in my head is expansion. How do we take that nationally? To what degree are you engaging with ministries of education and sharing the lessons, sharing the data? So I'd be interested, perhaps beginning with Gita, to sort of hear a little bit about your engagement with the national systems.
Thank you, Alex. We have only just begun. And when we are talking to the teachers, we are conveying what they are saying back to the ministries of education, the people at the ministry level. We're talking to them saying, you know, at grassroots level, we do it this way. I know you have policies and you have everything in place, but we need to connect the teacher and the child and the parent. And the message has to be uniform for this particular community. The message has to be in the language of that community. We can't be teaching English in Turkana. We can't be teaching Swahili in Nairobi. We have to teach the language or the sounds that are familiar to that child. So we try and get around the bureaucracy and the red tape to make them understand what is the need in the community, and then we can graduate up to the policies that they have uniformly prescribed for the whole country. Those are some of the conversations we have at that level.
Thank you. Some of our other panelists.
One of the things that we learned early on is it's important to work with the local communities, as Gita has said, to work with them and to work with the Ministry of Education. One, just to know that we're there. There are so many nonprofits, there's so many NGOs in many, many developing countries, and the government really isn't aware of what they're doing. So one, to connect with the government, the Minister of Education, so that they're aware of who you are and what you're trying to do. And secondly, to be very, very careful about working with those ministers of education, either at the national level or at the local level, to say, we're here to help your schools. We're here to help you look good. We're not trying to change the curriculum. We're not trying to change the country from a policy perspective. We're there to provide resources and education so that what they have can work.
Methodology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Expanding for us, sustainability, I mean, give your lead question to me again.
How do you take this great experience that you have in a smaller setting and get it national?
I was listening too hard to these people. We've had great luck with that, actually. In South Africa, the program works so well that they are now, through a Rotary grant, building the materials in country. I think that's a giant step for sustainability and for moving forward. We're trying to find ways to train, because this is such a simple program. It takes a 2-hour training course. That's all. If we can do it with video conferencing at long distance, that would be one way. We have so many ideas and how to make this effort to get children 0 to 5 involved with something really simple like letter sounds. I mean, that sounds like it's easy, but it's terribly difficult to have people look at a 2-year-old or an 18-month-old and think that this is a learning child, you know. It is. And that's what we'll keep trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions from the floor? There's a microphone there set up for you. Please come up to the mic and ask your question. Here we go.
Thank you for being here and doing this wonderful program. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of Emerald Planet TV. And I came up through the 4-H system in the United States, where you're teaching the children to teach the elders within the communities. So looking at the education, we're focused here on the children and all the wonderful things we're doing, but how is this actually changing the communities, the elders in these communities, so it enhances their lifestyle, the things that they're doing as far as leadership within the community and also within their country? And I think all 3 of these programs are absolutely fantastic. So how does this take it back out to the community from the schools? And thank you for being here.
Let's hear a couple of questions and then get the answers.
Thank you. Thank you for the panelists. That was a great presentation. My name is Yvonne Carr, the founder of Women Entrepreneurs for Africa. There's still so many barriers to education around the world. One of those problems is birth certificate. In Africa especially, so many girls still cannot go to school because they have no birth certificate. Isn't this time that the world makes birth certificate a human right?
Thank you. Next.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. My name is Lori Rodich. I'm with the only Maryland Rotary. I have a friend in Chicago who's been a kindergarten teacher for over 40 years, and she wants children to play, you know, and but here I'm hearing that get kids earlier than playing. So is it the common thread poverty? Is the common thread culture? Is it really necessary that children start reading at 2 and 3, or is it a matter of children learn? And then one other thing I want to say is Maestra from the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, I went to a thing and she said, you teach a man to read and he reads, you teach a woman to read and she teaches her kids, she teaches her nieces, her nephews, her community, and everybody. So thank you again for all the work you're doing.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, my name is Andy Koval. I'm the founder and CEO of MedPharm, a generic pharmaceutical company committed to helping the poorest of the poor in the poorest countries of the world. I'm also the CEO and founder of the Tasha Fund, a nonprofit what I set up 12 years ago when my daughter died of brain cancer. Starting with Keiko and the 5 pillars, as well as through all of the panels, there has been one significant neglect, and that is to mention that in the developing world, 60 to 80% of all children are infested with intestinal parasites. A child infested with intestinal has the highest dropout, the highest amount of neglect to intellectual growth, nutritional growth, and overall betterment. I have treated, by the time my daughter died of breast cancer, 400 million children worldwide through a whole series of NGOs. Since her death, I treated another 100 million. And going forward in the next 20 years, I will treat another 500 million. For me, it's absolutely critical that if you're going to talk about anything about women in development, you have to begin with what is going to help those children benefit from everything you're trying to bring. So again, I would plead the case that there was significant neglect, and I hope that that will be repaired, and I'm prepared to help out.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just turn it over to the panelists for their responses. I'm happy to take on the birth registration when you're done. Yeah.
I'll start with the last question about education and water sanitation and hygiene. Mm-hmm. Rotary has a significant effort to address the challenges, the problems of water sanitation and hygiene, particularly in schools. And we have been working for the last 4 years with an initiative called Wash in Schools. And what we're trying to do is marry up the water and sanitation folks with the education people. So it isn't just putting in toilet blocks, and it isn't just putting in hand washing stations, and it isn't just providing menstrual hygiene and education, that we do those things. But then we also work with the teachers and incorporate that or those structures, that infrastructure, that information into the classroom, so that little kids are writing about why do they need to wash their hands, and a little bit older kids are going into the younger classrooms and doing plays and skits about why they need to be using the toilets. That the older kids are incorporating. They just put this new toilet block into our school, and so let's look into the science and let's look into the technology of it, with the idea that then it becomes incorporated in what the kids know and understand, and then to your question, go out and share this information with the broader community. So it's not just about stuff, it's not just about inputs, it's about outputs, and the outputs are better educated children about the structures that we have provided, better educated children that go out and educate their parents and the broader community.
Thank you.
I would love to talk to the wonderful question about not playing. You don't playing is how you learn. The children aren't going to learn anything unless it's through play, really. Rote doesn't work. That's the reason learning the letter sounds is so easy. You could go out in your sandbox and you can make it, let's go make some ahs today, or ahs here, or ms. That's how a child learns. Think of all the clothing pieces they know when they're 2. Think of all the toys, all the food, all the objects they know. There are just 26 letters, 26 sounds, and certainly you should not teach them all at once. You go 3 or 4 at a time, and then you see the child is confident and volunteers, I know this one, and you add 1 more. You don't put pressure. No one learns with pressure. So I'm all about play. And it really is that the letter sound information is so easy for a child to learn. A little 14-month-old child was given a present by his mom. And it was the set, but she gave him the O, okay? So she gave it to him, he celebrated, he played with it for the first hour. And 3 days later, Mom was feeling very guilty. She thought she had lost the O, okay? And she finally had to confess to the child, I don't know where I put your ah. The child went straight to where he had put it 3 days earlier in a little box on the play shelf. He knew exactly what that ah was with 1 introduction, 1 time. We are missing our children. No one wants pressure on a child. But we put too much on them if we try to teach them the most difficult skill set anyone in life is ever going to have to learn, to read, in less time than we allow them to have to learn to dress or eat independently. Just let it go along. It parallels language learning beautifully. They know, last point, they know every single sound in their environment, according to Professor Patricia Cape Cool out of University of Washington, by the time they're 12 months old. Every sound, whether it's 3 languages or 1, they know every sound like a little computer. It's all in here. So that's the time. Thank you very much.
30 seconds on the birth registration. It's been more than 30 years since I've worked on the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but I believe that the convention includes, as part of the requirements, that national governments have birth registration universal in their countries. So it's an issue that I know UNICEF and other organizations are working very hard on. I agree, it's a huge challenge. I'm going to turn it back over to Clara, I believe, who will wrap up the program. Thank you very much, all. Thank our panelists as well.
Wow. How do you feel about this? Time to take action. We're very inspired by our stories today. Alice, Keiko, Brenda, Carolyn, and Gita, thank you very much. Action to take, join a Rotary Club, or join another service organization, or go volunteer at your local school and help a child. But now I want to thank you. We're closing up the program. I want to thank each of you for being here. I want to thank the people on the live webinar. And a special recognition to our partners at Global Partnership for Education, Alice, Alex, Gavi, Proveen, that helped us make this program. Jane from Rotary International, Mary Jo. I'm sorry to take the time, but it's very important to acknowledge people who make great things happen. I want to also thank the amazing volunteers from Rotary International. Please stand up if you're a Rotarian or a friend of Rotary and you helped in this program. I want you to be recognized. We also have sponsorships today. We have from Knighthead Annuities, Leslie Mann. Please stand up. Thank you very much. And Thomas Evans from Investec. My own company, Oppenheimer and Company, also sponsored. Special recognition to Najwa, just first name. Najwa is our artist. And I want to say that each of our speakers will be receiving one of these. Yeah. And I want Emmy to please come to, Emmy is representing the children. We wish we would have had more children, but they had to go to school. But I thank you for being here and presenting to each of our speakers a special gift. And that's it. I would like you to join us for coffee and for snacks and networking. Thank you so much. Now, welcome for a picture time with the speakers. Hello, everyone. I want everybody here to give a cheer for the World Bank and World Bank Staff Association for all they've done for us. Big cheer.